national anthem of France. So this song later became the national anthem of France. It was sung for the first time by the volunteers from Marseilles as they marched into Paris. So now this group of volunteers joining the army, they marched into the Paris, and they now demanded, and they now wanted the complete republic from the king. Okay, and well, men were busy fighting at the front, and the women had to earn a living and look after their families. So now all the men, they came out of the houses and they started joining the army, but the women, they had to earn and they had to look for their families during that time. Okay, and the people used to discuss government policies. Now the people started discussing the government policies, and they started making their own plan of action in the political clubs, and the most successful club was the club of Jacobins, okay, which got its the name from the convent of Saint Jacobin in Paris. Okay, so now the people, they started coming out of their houses and they started joining the army, and they started to learn politics right now, and they started discussing about the government policies, and they had their own plan to how to form the government and how to end up the monarchical system in complete monarchical system in France. Okay, so all the people now, they wanted a complete republic. Okay, so in the club they started meeting, and they started making a plan, and during that time the most successful club was the Jacobin Club, and the name come from Saint Jacob in Paris. The people of France, they wanted the complete republic, and they started forming a club. Okay, and this is not a club where you can sing and dance. This is a club of a party. Okay, and a group of people which includes shopkeepers, artisans, cooks, shoemakers, watchmakers, printers, servants, and daily wages workers. So these are the members of Jacobin clubs. Okay, and their leader was Maximilian Robespierre, and the leader of this Jacobin club was Maximilian Robespierre. Okay, they were dressed differently by wearing long striped trousers similar to those worn by dock workers. Okay, they were dressed differently during that. Now on 1792, what happened? The price of essential commodities kept on rising, and those people got so angry with the king, and they declared a war against the kings under the leadership of Maximilian Robespierre. So on 10th August 1792, these people attacked with the Persian people. They attacked the king's guard and killed them, and they also held the king himself as the hostage for the several hours, and they imprisoned the king, and now there was the France was without the king. So after the king, there was no one to look after France, and there was no one to ascend the throne. So what happened? Election was held in August 1917, and now what happened? All the men above 21 years of age were allowed to vote. Okay, and the newly elected assembly was called conviction. So this assembly was called conviction, and according to this assembly, all the men above 21 years old were allowed to vote. Okay, so according to this assembly, what happened? It abolished the monarchy on 21st September 1972, and France was declared a republic. And the Louis XVI was sentenced to death by the court on charge of treason. So now the Louis XVI was sentenced to death. Okay, so now he was sentenced to death by the court on the charge of treason. Okay, on 21st January 1793, he was executed publicly at a place called Place de la Concorde. Okay, and after some time, the King Maria was also sentenced to death. Okay, so because of that, the monarchical system in the France now came now was completely ended, and and after the king who was going to ascend the throne, we will be studying that. So the period from 1793 to 1794 is referred to as Reign of Terror in France. So after the death of the king, what happened? The Jacobins, the Maximilian Robespierre from the Jacobin family, he took complete control and he ascended the throne after the king. Okay, so Robespierre followed a policy of severe control and punishment. So he was so strict, and he followed a severe control and punishment during his reign. Okay, so during his reign from 1793 to 1794 was known as Reign of Terror. So many people were arrested and tried by the Revolutionary Tribal Court. They included all those people who were considered enemies, including ex-noblemen, clergy, and members of political party of Republic by Robespierre. If the court found them guilty, they were guillotine. Guillotine means it's a type of punishment given where the persons are executed. Okay. So the peasants were forced to transport the grain to the cities and sell it at a person fixed by the government. So the Robespierre was such a type of a ruler that if he feels that anyone is doing conspiracy against him, then all those people were given punishment, and those people were guillotined. Okay. So what was there during the time of Robespierre rule? Why was it called a reign of terror? So we will be discussing this. So number one is he got people executed who were threat to him. So if he feels anyone any people as a threat, then he used to execute those people. Okay, in front of public. Number two, set up a limit for wages. So he also set up a certain limit for the wages or a salary for the people. So there was a limit, okay, for the wages and the salary. Okay. Number three is limited the amount of meat and bread and one could buy. Okay, so he also limited, so there was a certain limit in buying the bread and meat during the time of Robespierre. Okay, the people who had enough money could not buy more bread and more meat. Okay, and there was a certain limit in buying the bread and meat. Okay, number four is farmers sold their harvest to or at a fixed rate. So farmers, they used to sell their harvest at a fixed rate to the government. Okay. Number five is churches were shut down. So all the churches were shut down, and these churches, and then buildings were converted, and these churches were converted in the buildings, government buildings and barracks and offices. Okay. And number six, where men and women were called citizen. So during his time, men and women were called citizen. Okay, so these all were the reasons why this period between 1793 to 1794 is known as the Reign of Terror. Okay, so finally in July 1794, the court convicted Robespierre, and this Robespierre was also guillotined in July 1794. So finally this Robespierre was also convicted by the court, and he was also given a punishment of death by the court, and he was guillotined. Okay, guillotined means he was given a death punishment. Okay, so after the fall of Jacobins, what happened? The middle class seized power again, and the new constitution was made according to constitution. There are so many new rules and regulation that was written. So now according to new constitution, what was the rules and regulation that was written in the new constitution, we were going to study about that. So after the fall of Jacobin, the wealthier middle class people, they seized the power and they wrote a new constitution. And according to that constitution, what was there? Number one was only the wealthier people can vote. So according to that constitution, only the wealthier people can vote. Number two was by their vote they used to choose the directors and executive. Okay, they used to appoint director and executive. So in the executive have 5 members. So why there was 5 member in the executive? Because they wanted to safeguard the concentration of power in one man only. Okay, that is the reason why they have 5 members in the executive. And number three is the director started. Now what happened? Number three is the director and this executive, they started fighting against each other, and the count later on this both the governments, directors and executive were dismissed. Okay, now there was no strong political structure. So there was no political structure now, and the military director got power. So now the military director, one of the military directors, so this director and they kept on fighting, and later on it was dismissed. And what happened?